Love that. No, we trash.
Is Gucci? We don't care about her.
99th percentile pass.
Nothing is bad. Louis Vuitton.
Today we're talking about death. Dramatic title? Yes, absolutely. Think about opening a subject line with the importance of death and it not being a teensy-weensy little bit dramatic. But it is not clickbait, and it is something that not many people discuss openly. I actually spent some time looking for someone candidly talking about raiding and the commitment and the time it takes and the perseverance, and it was honestly a struggle to find anything really. It's just not something we're talking about. Death in Final Fantasy XIV, in my experience over many years now, honestly seems a bit taboo, to the point of it rarely being showcased, which I do really think is detrimental to the long-term health of our raiding community. And being honest, the stats are showing and supporting that we have a really festering, rotting underbelly here. And that's not just a metaphor. I actively talk to people who are interested in participating in raiding Savage or Ultimate, and like especially newer players, that the general sentiment that I've obtained has been one of fear, intimidation, and honestly, even for the ones that break through, ridicule. And being a lurker, a lot of the statements I've seen berating these same people in various servers, these people push through to join a raid team or pug it, have been pretty cruel and condescending, making fun of their parses just because they were gray, which I think is really unfair to discredit their achievements of actually getting through something like E9S at all, which to the average player is definitely one of the harder fights that they will ever encounter. Any Savage raid is going to be much harder than any expert roulette, which I have seen firsthand demoralize them, and then we slowly see like a water dam of people building up wanting to raid, but being too intimidated and scared to do it, at like not even applying for groups at all. Like they're just like looking at it and they're like, I'm not gonna even apply, I'm not good enough. And then we're kicking down and having some of the members of our community that do get in, and we're berating them and demoralizing them, and it's any wonder why we see a lot of these same people never show up on these servers again. And like I said, that same festering, rotting underbelly and this obsession with the glamorization of raiding and the lack of talking about death in raiding shows in our stats in North America. So I'm going to be the one to kick this hornet's nest and toss my spicy 5 cents into it. To get into the meat of the point, I just think more than anything, as someone who is starting up their second raid team, is that we need to foster a mentality of learning, growth, encouragement, and uplifting one another and genuine understanding. Actually, I'm going to drill that point home, because I think just saying it like that is not enough. Especially as someone starting up their own raid team, a website, a second raid team going into Endwalker, I need to be very, very willing to be open, candid, and expose even my own flaws and weaknesses, which is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. And I'm going to try and do that myself. It's really hard to trust someone, in my opinion and my experiences, to be able to lead and help people to learn and grow if they aren't willing to even expose their own flaws, get critiqued, take that critique to the anvil, and hammer out that critique and polish their own style. If you're not willing to do it, why are you expecting me to? Which is definitely something that is incredibly humbling, sometimes flat out humiliating. Hello, my Ultimate Dragoon guide and GCD macros. Hello. But I feel that in order to be someone people can trust and put their faith in, I myself need to be willing to show that vulnerability and openness and willing to learn and grow. And especially because it is normal. Can I get an amen? In fact, when I made this channel, I did it because I really want to give back to the community that uplifted me from some really dark stuff that doesn't belong in this video and will not be in this video. And so my core tenets and values that I truly hold super deep to my person is to foster learning, growth, and uplifting the community. And so I want to say, Deaths happen. Crap hits the fan. Sometimes people just don't get how something is explained until they run into that tether over the DPS and crush the DPS pool 4 or 6 times. Sometimes mechanics a few people find easy, one person might actually find extremely difficult, like Lights Rampant. Many people are quick to say on Discord that they immediately understood Lights Rampant, and taking that statement as being true, because some people honestly do click that fast, and so I can believe it from some people, Lights Rampant has gone down as one of the most destructive progression blocking mechanics last tier. This really needs to be made normal, or rather to be talked about like it is normal, because fact is, it is normal. So it needs to be talked about like it's normal. This is progression. This is Savage raiding. Death is a part of raiding Savage. It is about that grit, that bite, that pushing your entire team further. And there doesn't really exist a single person who is raiding Savage who hasn't had their backside handed to them umpteen times. I'm sure also most of us, maybe not all, but most high-end raiders did not get there through divine purpose and blessed from birth with perfect summoner or samurai or black mage or machinist or whatever openers and rotations. No way, they're human too. They had to practice their rotation at a striking dummy, glaring at their cooldowns to come back to practice it again. Trust me, I've done that myself. I wish that we had a cooldown reset button. That's something that I probably will be actually making a video in the future about just a cooldown reset button, just because like if you have like 120-second cooldown that's a part of your rotation, just give me it back on a training dummy, please. But the point is, we have all at the higher end done the striking dummy for like quite some time, and the point also goes wiping, learning mechanics, learning positions, getting familiar with markers and layouts, which may be very different from the guide videos, like MTQ's amazing guide videos. I have nothing but positive things to say about those. But sometimes your raid group might do a different strat and deviate from that. Getting used to all of that, or like even when you can or cannot use cooldowns because the boss is going to phase transition. So me as like a dancer or a bard, I'm gonna hold on to something like battle voice. I'm gonna hold on to something like technical step. Me on my dragoon, I'm gonna hold on to battle litany, or me on summoner, I'm going to be holding on to devotion. I'm not gonna pop those, and learning when you can get away with these and how to raid, align all of your cooldowns in the raid so that you get the multiplicative buff. It is so much practice goes into that, and all of this complexity has been in many ways trivialized. Or heck, take Happy Brambles, which I've heard a lot of people talk about. People learning where to drop their puddles and then running to the other side. We had to go through the motions ourselves with that. Even speaking to various players from Japanese data centers, if I am lucky enough to interview some, that would be fantastic. Right now, I haven't really gotten any that are willing to do that. But speaking to them, there is a huge, huge difference in culture and approach towards defeat, growth, learning, and progression. One of the most jarring things to hear about the culture shock is apparently it's widely considered rude to even enter an instance without saying hello in some shape or form. Or often they'll just use like auto-translate text, which is something I've almost never really used myself on North America data centers. I've never really done that myself that much. I'll like accidentally hit the keys once in a blue moon, and then I'll be like, oh my god, why did I have this auto text? But point is that this has translated into significantly different amounts of success from Japanese to North American servers. We have seen the numbers from the Lucky Bancho survey, where Gilgamesh, which is my server that I love to bits, really isn't that special on these charts. In fact, relative to the Japanese servers, we're below average. We're not even average, we're below average. And we're the best North American server by a significant margin from these stats. Which really drives to that core point that I said at the opener of this video. Death in Final Fantasy XIV. Falling on our backsides over and over and over again and learning together and becoming stronger together, and that we should be okay and open to talk about it. It's essential. But we're not really at that point right now. Death in Final Fantasy XIV is at the point where it's taboo. to the point of it being very, very rarely showcased and very rarely talked about, which has translated directly, even on my own channel, to where I get comments scattered throughout all the videos remarking at myself dying or someone else dying to a particular mechanic with a very negative connotation, which I think that we need to remove that negative connotation. As I think that it's essential actually for our community to progress to the same level as the Japanese data center, to be able to be like, okay, you died, okay, did you learn from it? Okay, we're going to try and learn from this. Because there's always a learning opportunity, and being able to approach failure and learn something from it is something that's pivotal way beyond rating in pretty much any aspect of life. Is, okay, it's not did you fall off the horse, it's how did you recover from that. And for the record about the comments, before anyone's like, oh, you're trying to like victimize yourself or something. No, for the record, I don't worry about comments like that. I really don't, because all of these deaths, honestly, or these snafus, situation normal, y'all know the rest, I guess. These snafus that happen because I've savage raided for literally years, I know that this is normal. And so when I get that, I'm like, are you new here? Have you done savage raiding? Because you must be new if you're shocked at the death. But what that sort of comment does indicate to me, and why I'm bringing it up, is that we don't have enough people being candid about raiding experiences. Even in our sphere of raiding in gaming, it has become so glamorized, so polished, and so refined that the experience that someone like MTQ, or like the absolute bleeding edge tippiest toppest of the tippy top raiders, their experience is a far cry different from something like I or any other player that is just not at that level will get. And high-end raiding in Final Fantasy XIV has absolutely become glamorized at this point. It has absolutely become glamorized.
99% of parts.
Love that. No, we trash.
Is Gucci? We don't care about her.
99% of parts.
Nothing is better. Louis Vuitton?
You see these massive world first clears. You see people bringing up their glorious 99th percentile parses with absolutely flawless execution. In order to get a 99th percentile parse, it's not even flawless execution. You need to be using food, pots. There's gonna need to be no mess ups from anyone else. Good luck ever getting a 99th percentile parse in pugs. You see people eagerly linking to their FFlogs profiles in mentor chat. Yes. Even in mentor chatting game. Or Discord to show their superiority to your pitiful greens. Or God forbid if you cleared the last tier with a gray. You're practically scum of the earth at that point. And just be thankful that we tolerate your existence, mocking you across our Discord channels. Just be glad that's all we do with you. But reality is, there is a lot of glitz and glam, and for many people, that shine and that luster, that sparkling FFlogs profile is everything. With such a bright light, though, that same bright light can cast a wicked shadow, and honestly, sadly, oftentimes, this same glamorization brings out the absolute worst in people. Even some of the best people I have ever met in this game can be horrendous when it comes to this. It's mind-blowing sometimes how much of a shadow can be cast by this. And allow me to paraphrase something directed towards me with heavily family-friendly wording modifications tied to it. And trust me, I've lurked in the servers. I've seen what has been said. Nyan. Oh, nyan. My FFlogs page has bigger numbers than Cole Evyx, and hence I am a more valid raider, and thus a more valid player, and thus a more valid person as a whole than Cole Evyx. Get out of my raiding server, and get out of Gilgamesh, and give me your large houses. While you're at it, you terrible Rothgar playing gay loser. Nyan. True story. And I've seen worse too. Yeah, someone actually did. Sorry, I'm not supposed to respond. Sorry, I have Name It literally in the background listening to me as I'm recording this. And yeah, someone actually did, dude. I'm not even joking. I'm thinking, am I gonna even edit this out? But yeah, dude, this is insane. Like, but anyhow, moving on to no, some of these servers literally almost like it's almost like they just let that fly, and it's just like, oh, it's okay to like do that. But for the record, no one can hear you though, so I'm just gonna keep doing the recording. But kind of continuing on what I was saying is, I myself have been a part of raiding groups that actually opt to not post parses to FFlogs. Now people are gonna be like, why would someone not do that? Some groups explicitly for the reason that they don't want their median FFlog score to be lower on fights, don't upload. Because their median score, not even your top score, your median score, I'm going to try and edit it in and with an arrow here. This median score, they don't want it to be lowered. And then there's also this other argument called, quote unquote, bring down the curve. They don't want to, quote unquote, bring down the curve, which is honestly one of the most toxic things I have ever heard in gaming, where people explicitly discourage others from uploading lower parse clear fights that would lower the quote unquote average data set and hence raise some parses percentiles. Which the even weirder thing is, I have not looked into it, but I don't even think FFlogs actually determines percentiles that way.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
I mean, maybe I will spend some time looking into that after this video, but I don't even think that's how this works. So this actually translates directly into symptoms that we can see in game. And we are, to be frank, at a very different level than someone like MTQ Capture or like the Bleeding Edge Raiders. And so when I go into a group that has relatively unseasoned raiders, I've noticed usually the most green of the lot, like the people who have not been raiding since the Realm Reborn, like myself and so many others. Me doing that does not make me special, for the record. So many people have been doing that. But usually the most green of the lot seem to snap quickly. They're just like, "Rrr!" And they get very, very aggressive very, very quickly, because what they're doing, and I can understand where they're coming from, is, and I've talked to some, like trying to de-escalate situations, because that's what I definitely do as a leader. But they're trying to compare their current performance and the group's current performance to these MTQ Capture perfect, like, bleeding edge, most talented of the talented players we have in our entire community, and they're comparing these side by side, and they're like, this doesn't match. And that's a standard that is not fair or feasible to expect. And that's what I'm really trying to help convey.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
The glitz, the glam, the shine, the luster, that beautiful 99 percentile orange parse filled page, or pink parse, or whatever, that's not going to translate into your average raid group's gameplay. It's not. You're going to not clear an entire Savage raid tier with 8 average players in a single 8-hour sitting. In fact, I would be dramatically shocked if you could even do it within a week of doing that. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Normal raiding involves so many mistakes. It involves countless wipes on ridiculous mechanics that you might think are super easy, but some people might find hard. Like Shiva's Lights Rampant, or Anamorphous Cycles, or E2S's Quietus. That was a fun one to prog. Or even Shiva's, like, ads and getting that entire song and dance with the, like, interrupts on this. Stun on the Earth and Aether. Oh no, the Aqueous Aether didn't die there, so we're not getting the buff through the rest of Phase 2 Shiva. All of these things. It honestly, when it comes to Savage raiding, it's not about getting gear. It's ultimately about getting yourself with 7 close friends together to bash your faces against a fight until you all figure it out. Wipe, 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 wipe. And if you don't wipe and you do make it to the end, now you're at the point where you are going to be using potion consumables and stacking them with your raid buffs 2 to 3 times in a fight, or depending if the fight's really long, maybe 4. But you're trying to now use consumables to push what is called an enrage timer, when you are just not at a high enough DPS and try and get that fight down. And this is when healers DPSing really, really comes into account. A white mage pulling 10k DPS and a scholar between chain stratagem and their own DPS pulling 10 or whatever really makes incredible difference when you're trying to push a very hard enrage timer with low gear. Sometimes this honestly will translate into you needing to swap to a different DPS that your group might leverage better in that fight, such as I myself, personally, from personal experience, I've swapped Machinist, which is very much not focused on buffing the team, to Dancer, which is very much focused on buffing one particular member, to Bard, that buffs the entire team widely through this tier and last tier. And I've actively done that to leverage strengths in my own raid group at various times at different fights. Maybe someone's not feeling good that night. That's okay. That's raiding. People are people. People get sick. People have fights. People do this. Sometimes they have how to say it? Some people have off nights where they just can't manage to get mechanics down, or they know a mechanic and you've literally seen them do it, but they're just in a negative headspace because maybe they got yelled at work, or maybe something bad happened to their mom, or maybe they flunked a test at university. And so I think we really need to normalize death in raiding and progression. So as a part of me trying to normalize death in raiding and progression, without like explicitly saying it until this video, is I'm trying to normalize that. In the background of a lot of my videos, I am directly showing footage of my groups doing fights, and if I'm being totally blunt with you, totally transparent, which I think is essential, especially now that I have a platform, it is often filled with even me myself making oodles of rotational mistakes that I slap myself on the wrist for, like even now. Because I do know better. I have trained on a dummy better. I have gotten this rotation so down. But in, say, the heat of cycles or Titan Junction or Lights Rampant or whatever, like... Actually, what do we call the falling Titan rocks in E12S? I can't even remember. I think that's just Titan Junction, just boosh. You run to your rocks, then come back, whatever. Or Lions. Oh my god, that was a little tricky at first. Now I get it, but it was really hard to DPS properly during that. But I've eagerly repressed, though, like, E4S, the first tier Titan fight, with, like, the rocks and needing to split off into the different quadrants. And I can't even remember what they were called. But the point is, some mechanics get a little spicier, and then I notice that my rotation starts to go to garbage, especially on Bard, actually, where I sometimes see myself miss one of my, say, Mage's Ballad arrow procs at the last moment, or I could have used Pitch Perfect literally at the last second with 2 stacks, but it was too slow, and so I lost a lot of potency there. And you think I don't notice this? I notice it. And in fact, that's one thing that I said earlier, is it's just like I am being very exposed, very open about it, because I think that it is important if you have a platform. I think especially if you're trying to go into any form of leadership or anywhere that people should trust you, that you need to be open about this and be like, I understand, I messed this up, it sucks, I slapped myself on the wrist, but you know what, I'm now taking that criticism, that critique, that is going to me with this anvil here. I'm gonna pop into blacksmith, take out my hammer, and and hope that it turns out HQ. I mean, that's a huge part of raiding, is being able to take that failure, that mistake, be okay with it, not let anxiety grip you or like you to get like super demoralized or discouraged, and be like, okay, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna make something from it. And it's just like, crap happens. Everyone has off days, everyone makes mistakes. It's going to be you some days, it's going to be your healer some days, it's going to be your tank some days, it's going to be your other ranged DPS some days, it might be your melee. And it cannot be overstated that everyone will make mistakes in Savage Raid Prog. But unfortunately, instead of being overstated, it has unfortunately been understated, severely understated, with all the glamour, the shine, that shiny FFlogs profile, the, oh, look at me, let me link my FFlogs profile to you on Discord across 5 different servers, peasants. Imagine being grey. But the fact is, I frankly launched myself off platforms with the barred jump back, even sometimes literally just backstepped off of the platform mid-prog. And I'm okay saying that. This happens all the time to anyone that is actually raiding. And that is really the entire point of this video. To kind of like wrap it up and conclude it, especially as someone who is starting up their own raid team, especially as someone who's starting their own raid team and launching a website and all this stuff, if I'm not willing to expose my own flaws, get critiqued myself, take that critique to the anvil and hammer out and polish my own style, I don't deserve your trust. I don't deserve nothing. And can I get an amen up in here? Anyhow, that's really all I really have to say on this subject. Let's try and normalize this. Let's try and normalize progression in Final Fantasy XIV and to really rip off this completely false and built on falsehoods masks of perfection, especially when you think that people aren't even uploading some of their clears because they don't want to lower their median score on their profile. Ugh. It's not a real mask, because the fact of the matter is that mask is doing way more harm than good for the long-term growth and expansion of our own raiding community. It was an influx of players coming to Final Fantasy XIV. We need to talk about death. We need to talk about death a lot more.